Hello, my name is Guilherme and I'm from Brazil. Today I'm going to show you how generative magic can help us overcome cultural barriers in magic. Being a Brazilian magician myself, it's very common for me to present in Portuguese. My spectators and volunteers are also Portuguese-speaking people. So it's very weird for me to use English in the middle of a magic effect. It makes no sense, and it actually breaks the magical effect. It breaks the atmosphere, because it makes no sense to add anything English into a Portuguese magic effect, right? But what we do and what we face is something different. When we are learning magic, there's a lot of effects that are related to the language. For example, I'll take the spelling effect that is very simple, and that's why I like it. For instance, if we have some situation in the middle of the effect, we come to the 5 of spades. So there's a book which teaches you how to get to this effect and how to position the 5 of spades in the correct position and several other cards in the positions that they must be so that you can do it. So for some specific reason you get to the 5 of spades and then you go the F, I, V, E, O, F, and then S, P, A, T, E, S, 5 of spades, and you show the 5 of spades. Okay, so the method is somehow you have specific cards in specific positions that matches their spelling in English. And then you say, well, I'm an English-speaking magician and I perform for an English audience. That's fine. So you don't have to worry about anything. You can just perform. It's not a problem for you. Then you say, I'm a magic creator and I create magic for English-speaking magicians. It's not a problem for you too. It's a problem for us, magicians who perform for non-English speaking audiences. So if we want to show this kind of art, this kind of performances to those other cultures which speak other languages, it becomes a barrier. And the first barrier is usually mentioned in the way, well, you can just adapt the effect to your language, right? So if we're doing it in Portuguese, 5 of spades is 5 de espadas, so we can just position it correctly. For instance, C-I-N-C-O, D-E-E-S-P-A-D-A-S, and it's here. So whenever I count or whenever I spell, C-E-N-C-O, D-E-E-S-P-A-D-A-S, and we get to the 5 of spades. Yes, it makes sense, but remember, the effect is not just put the 5 of spades over there. The effect is much more complex, right? You probably need to do some math, or a lot of math, or a lot of trials to get all the cards that you want in the correct positions. And that has already been made in English, but has not yet been made in Portuguese. So an English magician, a magician which performs in English for audiences in English, gets this out of the box, right? They have their explanation, they can just get the effect and perform it. Other magicians cannot. They must spend the time, they must understand correctly how this effect was created so they can try to recreate that in their languages. Sometimes it might be an easy task, sometimes it's a difficult task, sometimes it's almost impossible. It depends on the effect, of course. But just because most effects that we read about are talking about English audiences, English-speaking magicians, and so on, we who do not perform for English-speaking audiences have to do more just to get to the same effect. Someone might argue, well, that's good because you're going to learn much more. Yeah, it's good that we're going to learn much more, but you put the barrier much higher. So now, while there are a lot of magicians who do not need to go through that barrier can perform that effect in English, all the other magicians who need to perform it in another language will not be able to perform it. Just a handful of them are going to be able to adapt it and perform it. And you might say, well, it's not my fault. I'm a magic creator. I'm using English. Yeah, I'm not saying it's your fault. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, yes, that's one of the problems of magic, is that we create it, it's a cultural manifestation, and we create it according to our culture. It's natural, it's not a problem. What we have is, when we want to use that in another cultural situation, it might not adapt so easily. And notice that I'm only talking about the language here, the language aspect of an effect. And of course, generative magic can help us do that. And many magicians will teach you the algorithms that they do by hand on how to set up the effects so that the 5 of spades and whichever other set of cards need to be on the positions that they need to be. But sometimes it might be very complicated. Generative magic helps us by doing that for us. So, for example, I have already implemented the support for spelling cards in Portuguese in the tradition of the formal way. So the formal way is when you call clubs, we call it paus, hearts, we call it copas, spades, we call it espadas, and diamonds, we call it ouros. But on the streets, that's not what the terms that people use in Brazil. In Brazil, it's very common to call it paus, coração, espada, and ouros or diamante, for example. So there are other words that in a cultural situation within Brazil that we use instead of the formal ones that I mentioned. Of course, if people use other languages, there are other words for them too. So let me show you how easy it is for me to take one effect that I have already created and migrate not only one, but all the effects that I have already generated with support to English and Portuguese to support now this informal version, this common version. So let me show you here how you get to implement support for another language into Generative Magic framework. So I'm here at my github.com/Guilherme Silveira/generative magic. Link is in the description. You could just hit T and then type, what's the name? Spelling.py. That's the name of the file which contains all the languages. You can also just navigate through the files. Just hit Generative Magic and then look for the spelling file, spelling.py. You will see that if you go down a little bit, there will be a language called English. Guess what? English is a simple language. It's just a structure that I created. Of course, this can be refactored as time passes. And it's composed of its values, for example, ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, and then the suits, clubs, hearts, spades, diamonds. Finally, we need to connect those two with the word off, right? Off is the connector, value plus suit. And Portuguese, well, Portuguese I already implemented because it's something that I do. And as soon as I implemented the class Portuguese here with a very similar structure, ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, and then the suits, and then instead of off, we use the word de. That's it. All the generative magic effects that make use of English now support Portuguese, at least the way I have done so far. Right? There's an example here in Japanese. I think the important point here in Japanese is that there's no space in this situation, and the suit and the value switch positions, right? So this is something that's different and needs to be implemented a little bit different. But for Portuguese, it's already there. And if I want to implement that second variation for Portuguese, as I mentioned, the Brazilian version on the streets, which is very common to be used, I can just copy this thing here. So let me show you how to do it. You can just come here in GitHub in this page, as I mentioned. You can just click the pencil for edit this file, and I'm editing the file. That's it. Of course, you need to create a user at GitHub. You can just create your user, register, and so on. Then you click edit. You go for the position where is the Portuguese language here, and if you want to implement French support, German support to your effects, go ahead. I'm going to implement Portuguese support to everyone's effects, and that's the Portuguese slang, or Portuguese on the streets, or Portuguese common, perhaps common. Of course, the perfect name doesn't really matter here. What matters is that I'm just adding support for this. Ace, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, that's the common way to call it. Then we have the valete, that's okay. Dama, sometimes we call it dama, sometimes we call it rainha. Then it depends. I'll stick to dama, it's common, it's not a problem. And then we have the suits. Paus, that's okay, that's what is commonly used. But copas, instead of copas, is coração. That's common to use, sete de coração. That's a common way of saying it. Espadas, and then instead of ouros, we use diamantes. That's also common. It's also common to say diamante, diamantes, both are acceptable. I'll stick with the plural here, and that's it, okay? We can add support to multiple of those and so on. Yet there's no support, but don't worry, that's enough for me. I'll stick to it. There's an extra return here, 2 lines is enough for me, blank lines, and that's it. I'll just say here what I have done. So in my situation here, what I have done was adding support for common Portuguese suit names, and I'll just commit my changes. In your situation, you might be required to create a fork, so the message will be a little bit different. Create fork, you hit create fork, and that's it. So you create your fork of the project and send the project a pull request asking, okay, please add support to this language that I'm implementing. Of course, you have to remember, I just did it, right? So it's already implemented. It's already supporting this variation of Portuguese, this common Portuguese that we use in Brazil. If you feel free to add your support to other languages, remember it's going to be added to all effects that anyone writes and anyone codes, so we all contribute to each other. But remember, the effects that you generate are your effects, are not my effects. The effects that I generate are my effects, are not your effects. But of course, the framework helps everyone. As we contribute here with new languages, if we contribute here with other ways of doing things, we just added support to break barriers so other people can use in their own language, in their own cultural environments. They don't need to recreate everything from scratch. I just updated it. I can generate the same magic that I generated in English, that I generated in Portuguese, the traditional Portuguese, the formal one. I can generate the same magic by running the same code, just with a change, Portuguese common instead of Portuguese. That's enough for me. That will get me a new effect in my new cultural situation. And it's something actually that I needed, so that's fine. I hope you liked it. I hope you can see now how by adding just this small feature, just the support for spelling, we can break just one small barrier on making magic more reachable and making it more broad and making other people being able to use it in their own environments. So leave your comments, leave your like, subscribe, and talk to you later. Thank you very much.